There's a kind of loneliness that sneaks in even when we're surrounded by people. A silence that echoes in our hearts despite the laughter around us. It's the kind of loneliness that no amount of connection seems to cure. We text, we talk, we share moments online, but something inside still feels unseen, untouched, unfelt. This loneliness doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being disconnected from ourselves, from ignoring the parts of us that ache to be heard, from silencing our own truth just to stay loved, accepted, or understood. We've built bridges to everyone around us, but somehow forgot to build one to ourselves. Healing this kind of loneliness begins the moment we stop reaching outward for validation and start reaching inward for understanding. It's when we dare to sit with our silence, instead of running from it. It's when we face the ache, the fear, the emptiness, and realize they're not our enemies, but messages asking to be felt. True connection begins inside. Until we can hold space for our own pain, no one else's presence will ever feel enough. Because what we're really craving isn't someone to fill our emptiness. It's our own courage to meet it. Healing this loneliness is not about finding the right people, it's about becoming the right home. A home where your feelings are safe. A home where your heart can rest. A home where you can finally say, I belong here, even in your solitude. And when we learn to love ourselves in our loneliness, connection stops being a way to escape pain and becomes a way to share wholeness. Loneliness is one of the most misunderstood emotions we experience. People often assume that it's simply the absence of others, that it lives only in empty rooms or quiet evenings spent without company. But the truth is, loneliness is far more complex. It's not about who's missing around us, but who's missing within us. You can sit in a room full of laughter, surrounded by familiar faces, and still feel a deep, unexplainable ache in your chest. That's the kind of loneliness that connection can't fix. The kind that whispers, even here, I feel unseen. This loneliness shows up quietly, sometimes without warning. It slips between conversations and lingers after moments that should have felt full. It hides behind the smiles we force and the roles we play. We might keep ourselves busy, chasing distractions to silence the emptiness, but the truth always finds its way back. Because loneliness doesn't demand attention through noise. It waits in silence, in the spaces where we pretend everything is fine. It's a reflection of disconnection, not from others, but from our own emotional truth. Often, this kind of loneliness grows when we stop being authentic. When we start performing instead of expressing, agreeing instead of feeling, pleasing instead of speaking up. We become strangers to ourselves, wearing masks that gain us acceptance but cost us inner peace. The world may see us as connected, always online, always surrounded. But inside we're starving for a kind of intimacy that only honesty can bring. The loneliness isn't that no one is listening, it's that we stopped speaking our truth. There's also a subtle grief in this loneliness. A mourning of self-abandonment. When we betray what we truly feel to avoid rejection or judgment, we slowly lose the sense of belonging that can only come from being real. We begin to crave connection that doesn't just fill time, but fills the heart. Yet we find ourselves repeating old patterns, trying to fix inner emptiness with outer activity. It's a cycle that deepens the ache, because no amount of company can comfort a self we've turned away from. Loneliness, in its deepest form, is an invitation. It's not a punishment or a flaw. It's the heart's way of calling us back home, back to stillness, to truth, to the parts of us we've neglected. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also sacred. It asks us to stop seeking noise and start seeking presence. To stop searching for someone to understand us and start understanding ourselves. Because the moment we meet our own loneliness with compassion instead of fear, it begins to transform. To heal this kind of loneliness, we must first recognize what it's trying to show us, that connection without authenticity will always leave us empty. Loneliness is not solved by proximity. It's healed by presence, our own. When we begin to see ourselves clearly, to listen to what our silence is saying, we start to realize that loneliness isn't the absence of people. It's the longing to return to who we truly are. Disconnection doesn't always start with others walking away. Sometimes it begins quietly, with us walking away from ourselves. It happens when we stop listening to what our heart is trying to say, when we silence the voice inside that says, something doesn't feel right. We often think of loneliness as a social problem, but at its root, it's a spiritual and emotional one. It's born the moment we abandon our truth in order to belong. We start editing parts of ourselves to fit in, trimming our emotions to seem fine, and pretending that our needs aren't that deep. Each time we do, we build another wall between who we are and who we pretend to be. This disconnection grows gradually, so slowly that we hardly notice it happening. We convince ourselves that we're okay because we're functioning, busy, productive, and surrounded by people. But beneath that surface, something inside us starts to dim. We stop recognizing our own reflection because we've replaced it with the expectations of others. We stop trusting our feelings because they've been labeled as too much. And in that process, we lose the intimacy that only self-awareness can bring. The ache we feel isn't for more connection. It's for reconnection with ourselves. Often, this inner disconnection is disguised as independence. We tell ourselves we don't need anyone, that we can handle everything on our own. But that's not strength. It's self-protection. It's the armor we wear to avoid vulnerability. And while it may keep us safe from disappointment, it also keeps us distant from the tenderness that makes life meaningful. True connection, even with others, requires that we stay connected to our own emotions. Because when we numb our pain, we numb our capacity for love too. The wall that blocks the hurt also blocks the joy. Sometimes this disconnection begins in moments of hurt. A betrayal, a loss, a time when our feelings were invalidated. To survive, we shut parts of ourselves down. We tell our heart, don't feel too much, and our mind, don't hope too high. It's a protective instinct, but over time it becomes a cage. We forget that those parts of us we've silenced are still there, waiting. The sadness, the sensitivity, the wonder, they all want to be welcomed back. Healing begins when we stop shaming those emotions and start listening to them again. When we are disconnected within, even the most genuine relationships can feel distant. Someone can be right beside us, offering love, but if our inner world is closed off, we can't fully receive it. The heart that's disconnected from itself doesn't recognize safety when it arrives. It keeps reaching, grasping, searching, not realizing that what it's really looking for is permission to come home to itself. No one can give us that permission. It must come from within. And so, disconnection is not the absence of love, it's the absence of self-trust. It's forgetting that our emotions, our instincts, our inner wisdom are sacred guides. The moment we stop honoring them, we begin to drift. The way back isn't through fixing relationships or changing circumstances. It begins with a quiet act of honesty, sitting still long enough to feel what we've avoided. Only then can we begin to bridge the gap between who we've become and who we truly are. There comes a moment when we realize that no matter how many people we talk to, how many messages we send, or how many arms we fall into, the emptiness inside still lingers. It's a hollow space that no amount of attention or affection can fill. This is where so many of us get caught, in the belief that if we can just find the right person, the right group, or the right kind of love, the ache will finally disappear. But the truth is, what we seek externally can never replace what we've lost internally. You can surround yourself with people who love you deeply and still feel a quiet distance that no one else can cross. The reason external connection can't heal internal emptiness is because emptiness isn't a lack of people. It's a lack of presence. Not their presence, but yours. When we've disconnected from our own emotions and desires, no one else's validation feels real enough to stay. Compliments fade, attention passes, and even love begins to feel shallow. It's not because others aren't giving enough. It's because we're unable to receive. Until we are rooted in self-acceptance, every connection becomes temporary comfort rather than lasting nourishment. We often turn relationships into rescue missions, hoping someone will save us from the loneliness we carry. We look for partners, friends, or communities to fill the spaces where we've abandoned ourselves. But that kind of healing doesn't come from the outside in. It happens from the inside out. External connection can soothe, but it cannot substitute. It's like trying to fill a broken cup with more water. No matter how much we pour in, it keeps leaking out until we repair what's cracked within. True connection can only be felt when we have first reconnected to the one person who never leaves: ourselves. This pattern often begins with a deep fear, the fear of being alone with our pain. So we run toward distractions, relationships, and noise to drown it out. We think that being loved will make the ache go away, but love that we haven't learned to receive can only touch the surface. It can't reach the parts of us we've walled off. Healing this emptiness means being willing to stop running, to sit in the silence, and to listen to what it's asking for. It's not asking for more people. It's asking for more presence, honesty, and care from ourselves. Sometimes we use external connection as a way to avoid the deeper work. We think, if someone else sees me, then I'll finally see myself. But that's not how it works. When we depend on others to define our worth, we hand them the power to take it away. That's why external validation feels so fleeting. It's never ours to keep. Internal healing, on the other hand, builds a foundation that can't be shaken by rejection, silence, or change. When we find peace inside, the love we receive outside becomes an addition, not a requirement. And so, the emptiness we try so hard to fill isn't a curse. It's an invitation. It's the soul's gentle reminder that no one else can do the inner work for us. Relationships can guide, inspire, and support, but they can't replace the relationship we must have with ourselves. External connection was never meant to fix us. It was meant to reflect the healing we've already begun within. When we stop chasing completion and start creating it, connection transforms. It becomes sacred, mutual, and free. There's a kind of bravery that doesn't make noise. It doesn't come with applause or recognition. It's the quiet courage of sitting with yourself when every part of you wants to run. We live in a world that teaches us to escape discomfort at all costs. We scroll, we distract, we keep busy. But healing begins in the stillness we avoid. It's in the moments when we stop running from our emotions and dare to feel what's really there. The sadness, the confusion, the ache we've been trying to cover up. Sitting with yourself isn't a sign of weakness. It's one of the most profound acts of self-respect. When we finally slow down, silence can feel almost unbearable. All the feelings we've pushed away start to rise to the surface. The memories, the regrets, the fears. It can feel like too much, but this is where transformation begins. We often think we need to fix our pain, but sometimes it just wants to be witnessed. Pain softens when it feels seen. Emotions are not problems to solve, they're experiences to move through. The more we resist them, the louder they become. The moment we sit still and say, "I'm here with you," to ourselves, something inside begins to shift. Sitting with yourself means choosing honesty over distraction. It's allowing tears to come without apologizing, letting anger move through you without shame, and holding confusion without demanding instant clarity. We tend to believe that being strong means staying composed, but real strength is learning to sit in the storm without needing to escape it. It's trusting that you are capable of holding your own emotions, no matter how heavy they feel. This kind of courage doesn't look heroic, but it changes everything. Because it's where we finally meet our truth. The more time we spend avoiding our feelings, the more disconnected we become from who we are. We can't know ourselves if we're always turning away. When we sit with our pain, we begin to see what it's been trying to tell us. Sometimes it's asking for forgiveness, sometimes for release, sometimes simply for attention. These emotions carry wisdom. They show us where our boundaries have been crossed, where our hearts have been silenced, where our needs have been ignored. By sitting with them, we begin to reclaim the parts of ourselves we've long abandoned. It takes courage to face the emptiness without trying to fill it. It takes courage to listen to the thoughts that surface in stillness. But in doing so, we learn something powerful. That our emotions aren't here to break us, they're here to free us. Each feeling we allow ourselves to sit with, no matter how uncomfortable, becomes a bridge back to ourselves. The silence we once feared becomes sacred. The loneliness we once ran from becomes a teacher. The pain we once rejected becomes proof of our own aliveness. And so, the courage to sit with yourself is not about isolation, it's about intimacy. It's the willingness to befriend your own heart, to understand it, to honor it, to be patient with it. It's realizing that healing doesn't happen when life gets quieter, it happens when we stop silencing ourselves. The more we sit with what hurts, the less it controls us. We start to feel lighter, not because the pain disappears, but because we've learned how to hold it with grace. In that stillness, we don't find emptiness. We find depth. There's a part of healing that no one can rush or do for you. The part where you learn to treat yourself with the same tenderness you've always given others. We often believe that to move forward, we must be hard on ourselves, that guilt and pressure are the only ways to change. But healing doesn't bloom in harshness. It grows in gentleness. Self-compassion is not a weakness. It's the medicine that helps the wounds inside us finally exhale. It's choosing to speak kindly to yourself when the world, and your own mind, feels unforgiving. Self-compassion begins with a small but powerful shift, learning to be on your own side. For so long, many of us have treated ourselves as enemies, criticizing, comparing, and questioning every step. But the truth is, you can't heal in an environment of hostility, even if that hostility comes from within. The voice that says, "I'm not enough," doesn't motivate growth, it paralyzes it. When we replace judgment with understanding, we create the safety that allows transformation to happen naturally. Healing requires safety, and safety begins with self-kindness. When you start practicing self-compassion, you begin to notice how much of your pain comes from unmet expectations. We punish ourselves for not being over things fast enough, for still missing people, for not being as strong as we think we should be. But compassion whispers, "You're doing the best you can with what you have." It reminds us that recovery isn't linear. It's layered, messy, and human. Self-compassion gives us permission to rest in the middle of our progress, to breathe instead of forcing ourselves to heal on a deadline. There's a healing magic that unfolds when you stop fighting yourself. When you say, "I forgive you for not knowing better back then," or "It's okay that you're still learning how to let go." Every time you meet your pain with gentleness instead of resistance, you loosen the grip of shame. Shame thrives in silence and judgment, but it withers in warmth. The more compassion you offer to your inner wounds, the less power they have to define you. This is not self-pity, it's self-respect. It's the act of saying, "I matter, even when I'm messy." Self-compassion also teaches us that love isn't something we earn through perfection. It's something we cultivate through presence. It's easy to love yourself on the days you're productive, admired, or successful. The real work is learning to love yourself when you're tired, uncertain, or afraid. That's when compassion becomes transformative. It allows us to hold our pain without drowning in it, to see our flaws without defining ourselves by them. It helps us remember that being human was never meant to look flawless. It was meant to feel real. And perhaps the most profound thing about self-compassion is that it slowly rewrites our story. It turns the inner critic into a guardian, the shame into softness, the pain into wisdom. The more we choose gentleness, the less we need validation. The more we forgive ourselves, the freer we become. Compassion doesn't erase our struggles, it changes how we carry them. It reminds us that healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about finally feeling safe to be who we already are. There comes a point in life when you realize that belonging isn't something you can find in the eyes of others. It's something you must return to within yourself. For years, many of us have built our sense of worth around approval, acceptance, and connection. We've learned to shape, shift to fit in, to speak softly when we wanted to shout, to hide our fears because vulnerability felt unsafe. But somewhere along that path, we lose our inner home. We start to belong everywhere and nowhere all at once. Accepted on the outside but disconnected on the inside. Reclaiming inner belonging means coming back to the truth that you were never meant to earn love by becoming someone else. Inner belonging begins when we stop performing and start being. It's when we decide that who we are, even in our uncertainty, our scars, our unfinished growth, is enough to stand in. It's a quiet rebellion against every voice that told us we had to prove our worth. The journey back to ourselves is often uncomfortable because it asks us to peel away layers of conditioning and expectation. We start to see how often we've traded authenticity for approval. And yet, the moment we choose honesty over perfection, we start to feel a warmth that no external validation can match. That warmth is belonging. The kind that starts from the inside out. Reclaiming inner belonging requires patience. It asks us to rebuild trust with ourselves after years of self-abandonment. It's about listening to your intuition again, even when doubt creeps in. It's forgiving yourself for the moments you stayed silent to avoid conflict, for the times you ignored your needs just to keep the peace. You can't return home to yourself with anger. You return with compassion. Belonging doesn't bloom in blame. It grows in understanding. The more gently you approach your own heart, the more it begins to open again. When we stop searching for belonging in other people, we start finding it in the smallest, most intimate moments, in solitude, in creativity, in stillness. It's in the morning light that touches your face when you wake, in the quiet breath that reminds you that you're still here. You realize that belonging isn't something someone else gives you, it's something you grant yourself every time you choose authenticity over acceptance. Every time you say, "This is who I am," and stand by it, even when it's not easy. Reclaiming inner belonging also means setting boundaries that honor your peace. It's understanding that you don't have to explain or justify your healing to anyone. The right people will respect the rhythm of your growth. And when they don't, it doesn't mean you're too much. It means you're finally becoming aligned. True belonging doesn't demand shrinking, it celebrates expansion. When you stop betraying yourself to stay close to others, you begin to attract connections that feel safe, real, and mutual. Perhaps the most beautiful part of reclaiming your inner belonging is realizing that you were never truly lost, just distant from your own heart. The world taught you to search for belonging outside of yourself, but your soul has been waiting patiently for you to come home. It's been whispering, "You don't have to earn your place, you already belong." When you start believing that truth, the need to prove, perform, or please begins to fade, and what remains is peace. A deep, quiet knowing that no matter where you go or who stays, you carry your home within you. When we seek connection from a place of emptiness, relationships often turn into lifelines instead of shared journeys. We hold on too tightly, love too anxiously, and give too much in hopes that someone else's presence will silence the noise within us. But when we begin to heal, we realize that connection rooted in need is not the same as connection rooted in wholeness. Healthy connection doesn't ask someone else to complete you. It allows both people to show up as complete human beings, each carrying their own story, their own light, and their own wounds. Wholeness turns connection into freedom rather than dependence. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection, it means self-awareness. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are and what you value. When you live from that grounded space, relationships stop being a place to hide your brokenness and become a space to express your truth. You no longer give to earn love or stay to avoid loneliness. You give because it feels right, and you stay because it's genuine. Wholeness allows you to connect from a place of abundance rather than desperation, to share love because you want to, not because you need to. When we are whole, we stop confusing intensity with intimacy. We no longer mistake chaos for passion or validation for love. We understand that peace is not boring, it's healing. Healthy connection feels calm, even in its excitement, steady, even in its vulnerability. It doesn't drain you, it nurtures you. It invites both people to breathe freely instead of walking on eggshells. When you've done the inner work to know yourself, you start to recognize that love isn't supposed to hurt. It's supposed to hold. One of the most powerful shifts that comes with wholeness is learning to communicate from authenticity instead of fear. You begin to speak up instead of suppressing your feelings to keep the peace. You express your needs without guilt, and you allow others to do the same. Healthy connection doesn't demand sameness. It honors individuality. It's two people choosing honesty over comfort and empathy over ego. When we're whole, we stop seeking control in relationships and start seeking understanding. We realize that love is not about possession, it's about presence. Wholeness also changes the way we handle distance and conflict. When your sense of worth no longer depends on someone's approval, disagreements stop feeling like threats. You can face tension without losing yourself in it. You can love deeply and still walk away when something dishonors your peace. That kind of clarity comes only when you no longer need another person to define your happiness. Wholeness gives you the strength to say, "I choose love, but I also choose myself." Ultimately, healthy connection is born from two people who have met themselves first. It's built on mutual respect, emotional honesty, and the shared understanding that love is a choice, not a rescue. When you bring wholeness into your connections, you stop chasing what's fleeting and start nurturing what's real. You realize that the best relationships aren't about losing yourself in someone else. They're about finding new ways to be yourself beside them. There comes a sacred turning point in every healing journey. The moment we realize that loneliness doesn't disappear when someone else arrives. It softens when we learn to be at home within ourselves. Wholeness isn't the absence of pain or the constant presence of joy. It's the quiet balance of both. It's waking up and knowing that no matter what happens, you can hold yourself through it. This kind of peace doesn't come from external comfort, it grows from deep self-connection. The kind that reminds you that even in solitude, you are never truly alone. When we begin to heal, we start to see loneliness differently. It's no longer a void waiting to be filled, but a mirror reflecting where we've forgotten to love ourselves. Every ache becomes a message, every silence a doorway. We stop fearing solitude and start embracing it as sacred space. A place to hear our own voice without interruption, to understand our desires, and to meet the parts of ourselves we once avoided. Wholeness doesn't require constant company. It requires constant honesty. It's knowing yourself so intimately that being alone no longer feels empty. It feels like returning home. Wholeness transforms the way we experience love and connection. When you are whole, you don't seek relationships to escape loneliness, you enter them to expand joy. You stop asking others to complete you because you've already made peace with the parts of you that were once hidden. Love becomes something you share, not something you seek to survive. And in that shift, relationships become lighter, freer, more authentic. They stop being a way to fill space and start being a way to celebrate it. Wholeness also changes the voice inside your mind. The inner critic that once shouted, "You're not enough," begins to soften. The fear that used to whisper, "You'll always be alone," starts to lose its power. Instead, there's a new voice, calm, compassionate, steady, that says, "You're okay here. You're safe with yourself." This voice isn't loud, but it's consistent. It guides you through uncertainty and holds you through silence. It reminds you that being whole doesn't mean never hurting again. It means trusting yourself to heal when you do. There's a unique kind of freedom that comes with wholeness. A freedom that doesn't depend on who stays or who leaves. You no longer need to chase love, because you've realized you are love. You no longer need to be understood by everyone, because you understand yourself. The walls you once built to protect your heart become windows. Openings that allow light in, but also let your light shine outward. Wholeness doesn't isolate you. It connects you more deeply to everything and everyone around you, because you're no longer trying to prove your worth through them. And so, when you reach the space of wholeness, the loneliness that once felt unbearable becomes something tender, almost sacred. You begin to see that being alone and being lonely are not the same. Solitude becomes a companion rather than a threat. You find peace in your own rhythm, joy in your own presence, and strength in your own silence. You stop seeking completion in others and start discovering the infinite completeness within yourself. The steady, unshakable truth that you were never broken, just waiting to remember your own wholeness.